The Positive Side. It's the first coffee table book that deals with AIDS with the objective to enhance awareness about the virus and life after infection. It's been brought by the Modi Care Foundation. It's an independent non-profit organization brought together really by the Modi Group. And joining us now in the studio today is Samir Modi, Vice Chairman, Modi Care Foundation. He's the man behind the book. But we're going to examine today the larger question that stems from this book. Do Indian corporates do enough of corporate philanthropy? Are they generous enough when it comes to social causes? Thanks very much, Samir Modi, for joining us. Also joining us, Amit Mitra, Secretary General of FICCI, and Jairam Ramesh of the Congress, but he's here wearing a different hat as usual. Thank you all very much for joining us. Samir Modi, what pushed you to do a book on AIDS? How much has your corporation, your foundation, put into this specific project?
The basic reason we got into AIDS is, as I looked in what was the thing that was going to affect India as a whole, whether it's the corporate world or the society or community at large, we found that AIDS was one epidemic that was really here to threaten. But along with that was the voice that will never happen to us. There's a closing of the eye and saying that this can happen not to us but to the man outside.
And this Modi Care Foundation is specifically committed to prevent the spread of HIV/AIDS. And how much has your company put into this specific project?
Well, so far we have spent around about 4 crore rupees, and we plan to really put close to about 20 crores in the next 3 years into this venture. But the whole idea really is prevention, awareness and education.
Okay, let's broaden the debate at this point. Jairam Ramesh, here you've got a corporate saying we put 4 crores into AIDS prevention research. Is that just a drop in the ocean? Is this representative of the way Indian industry now looks at social causes, or do you believe they have no social conscience?
No, I think Samir, certainly what Samir done is very commendable, and increasingly Indian corporates are becoming socially aware. But I do believe, barring the Tatas and the Godreges, in general, the record of Indian corporate sector in social development is pathetic. Not only is the record in paying taxes pathetic, not only is the record in piling up non-performing assets pretty pathetic, but the record in social development, barring, these examples that I gave, the Tatas and the Godreges are outstanding examples. And in recent years, Infosys and Wipro have also done a lot, and Samir again is representative of the younger generation. But if you were to ask me, I think Indian industry's record in social development is pathetic.
Amit Mitra, quick response. That's a strong statement. Pathetic social record.
Well, I think Jairam is not aware that in the United States, only 4.7% of giving is in the corporate sector. 81% is on the individual basis. And what is interesting is only 2.1% of GDP was spent in the United States in 1964. Today it is only 1.9%. So it is not that corporates are running after social development. They ought not to be. They are there to make a buck. In the process of producing. Our point is, Indian corporates are undergoing a change from building temples, which is also a social activity all over the country. They're moving towards health and education. We have to encourage them. Fiscal incentives will have to go hand in hand, and a cultural change that Samir Modi represents is happening on the ground. It is not Infosys, Wipro doing great work, which they are. There is Ranbaxy doing from the pharmaceutical sector. There is Tata, the Taj Group of hotels doing. There are the Birlas doing in a variety of ways. It's not just Godrej and these people.
You'll always find examples. Every company will have an ambulance that it has donated, or a hospital that it has run, or a book that you have published. That's not the issue. The issue is larger, Amit. It's the social conscience. Is Indian industry actuated by a desire for involving itself in the social community? And I draw a distinction. The Tatas and the Godreges are different. They have a different social vision, and you would agree with me. But increasingly...
That's a particularization. I would say there's a cultural change underway over 200 years that happened under capitalism in the West is underway, and more corporates and FICCI members today. 31 of them we've given to the Prime Minister, spending significant proportion of their profits in corporate giving. It's a new culture.
There's also the argument here at this point that it's good enough to ask whether Indian corporates give enough, but are there incentives for Indian corporates to actually be beginning a philanthropic culture? Let's just take a look at one of the arguments which Indian corporates give whenever they're asked whether or not they're giving enough. Well, they say that there are very few fiscal incentives to encourage corporate donations? Jairam.
No, I think this in India, everything ultimately boils down to a fiscal incentive. I think the most important social role that Indian corporates can play is to pay back the 80,000 crores that they owe to banks and financial institutions. That's the first thing. Over and above that, you can talk of AIDS and family planning and so on and so forth.
We're digressing a bit there, but Samir, would it help if there were incentives?
I think that more than incentives is only one part of it. I think the policy needs to be proactive. It took us many years to get an 80G tax exempt, and that was not 100%. And we were told that AIDS is not a broad enough topic. So either you make your platform broad enough, or you think of something else. I think that the government, along with the public, it's everyone's job to make India what it needs to be. Otherwise, everyone will suffer.
But how do you respond, Samir Modi, to what Jairam Ramesh has said, that there's a different culture that the Tatas and the Godrej's had, and that culture simply does not exist among today's corporates? Would you agree that that's an oversimplification, a total generalization?
I think it is oversimplification. I think that there are people coming forth who want to do, who have the will, who have money. They may not have the resources to the size or the magnitude of the Tatas, but they are going in their own small way, putting in the money, putting in the effort, not for publicity, but for a better India.
I think there's one more issue here. Government has to work with corporates at the grassroots level in execution. We were doing the Gujarat 2,500 homes completed. In the process, we found there was no working in tandem with government at the ground level, which becomes bottleneck.
But the argument here which Jairam put across was that as far as giving is concerned, it's reduced to tokenism. It's reduced to a book. It's reduced to handing over an ambulance, or even some token action in the case of an event like Gujarat. Would you agree?
No, I don't think so. Look, we have raised $27 million for the Gujarat work, building 7,000 homes. Pepsi has given $1.5 million. Star has given $1.5 million. Now the point is, why should they give? They know how to run a business, not to build a church. That's the freedman's perspective.
Undoubtedly, in a time of an emergency or a crisis, like the Gujarat earthquake or floods in Orissa, corporates, do come forward, and it makes good business. I think 2 points I want to make. One, fiscal incentives is the wrong road to take. It's the wrong route to take to instill a social conscience. The social conscience, of course, has to come once you start making profits. I agree with you. If you're loss-making, you're not going to be able to do corporate philanthropy. It's only when you are profitable, you're commercially viable, that you generate the surpluses for philanthropy. But I think the point that Amit was making, there is a difference between individual philanthropy and corporate philanthropy. I agree that very rich individuals, Narayan Murthy, for example, gives his personal wealth or Bill Gates, or even Nandan Nilekani has given money for schools, auditoriums and so on. That's different. We're talking of company policy, Amit, but company vision. Company vision.
But I differ on your point. I think that we don't have enough time to really say that do X or Y because we make profits. We don't make profit, we still do our social work. It is time that Indians, whether corporates or individuals or communities or societies, have to really put their mind on where they want to see India go.
Well, the argument also comes at this point that philanthropy in the Indian context can always have an Indian meaning, which brings us to another question, Jairam. I want to bounce this off you, but let's put it on the screen for our viewers. We're talking of whether Indian corporates give enough. Well, the argument which corporate India again puts forth is that Indian corporates can always have other traditional ways of doing philanthropy, like, as was mentioned, education projects, building and running temples. Isn't that philanthropy, Jairam?
Yeah, sure. I mean, traditionally, building temples has been the most visible form of corporate philanthropy, particularly of FICCI members. But I think we are going beyond temples now. We are getting into social issues. As Samir is mentioning, we're talking of health, we're talking of education, we're talking of rural development. Now, undoubtedly, the country is littered with projects here and there of some involvement of the other, or some FICCI member or a CIA member. That's not the debate. The debate is not that. The debate is not on individual efforts.
Infrastructure is the government's job.
Yeah, surely. Law and order is government's job. Infrastructure is government's job.
Social health and education.
But social health and education also should be government's job.
Let me add one other dimension. In the West, as it is beginning to be in India, your product itself vis-a-vis shareholders and consumers are beginning to have an element of corporate social responsibility. Consumers are beginning to check whether you are socially responsible. Shareholders are beginning to check whether you're socially responsible. Corporates are beginning to see there's a value to that in terms of profitability and image.
One final contentious question, though, managing social diversity. How many of our corporates manage the social diversity? How many of them provide employments to minorities, to disadvantaged groups? Do we see that at all in our corporates?
The record of Indian companies in reflecting and managing diversity in the workplace is abysmal. It's pathetic and it's abysmal. Not only in terms of employment of minorities, employment of Dalits, employment of tribals. Again, a handful of examples one can take. But by and large, affirmative action for disadvantaged groups is not something that the Indian corporate sector can hold its head high. Not the public sector. The public sector's record here is outstanding, I might add.
As you continue to bear your fangs at corporate India, let's get a response from the other side.
I think, if you look at the FICCI Awards annual in applications on disabled employment, it is growing every year. People who are employing disabled and challenged people, as today is called, I think it's a matter of evolution of modern capitalism in a developing country where people become conscious of this wider process.
I think it's not about diversity. It's really about taking ownership. There needs to be education. I don't think whether you're educated or you're uneducated. People don't understand what needs to be done. People want to make a difference, but they don't know how to make a difference. And it's equally the government's job, your job, my job, and the media's job really to educate people on how they can give back.
Right. Well, fair enough. I think how to manage social diversity and whether our companies should have affirmative action in their corporate policy is an entirely different subject which we will tackle one day. But thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Modi, many congratulations on bringing out this book. It obviously will be a trendsetter for corporate India. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And from on down me and the entire team here at News Hour, a very good night.
Good night.